Sometimes you're under the influence of things that people said to you when you were really young that no longer apply. You have all kinds of false premises. Perception itself is just what you've decided to make it. We're going to tell you a quick story talking about perspective. Really going to like this. So Esther has a house and a guest house in Southern California, and she returned there and sat at her desk, which is in her living room, and was working. And she looked up. She hadn't been there in months. She looked up to look out at where the ocean is, but she couldn't see the ocean because the rains had been more this year. The bushes had grown out, and she was obscuring her own ocean view with her own bushes, which she thinks is funny because she's always trimming her trees for the neighbors behind her, and now she's blocked her own ocean view, unaware of it. So the gardeners came that day, and she said to them, would you please trim these bushes along this fence line because I can't see the ocean from my desk? And they said, yes, we will. And then they said, how much do you want them trimmed? And Esther said, way back. Just get them back there against the fence so I have a clear view like I used to. And then they said, well, there's something else down in the ravine that is part of the obstruction of your view. And Esther said, well, I own half of the ravine, somebody else owns the other half, so just don't cut anything that's not on my half of the ravine, but thank you very much. And they said, we'll get your view back. And Esther said, that's great. So a friend picked her up for lunch. They went off for lunch, then they went shopping, and when they came back, Esther walked across the deck and she looked out. Oh boy, was that view back. It was so beautiful. Then she looked out across the way and she saw two rather large tree stumps right up against somebody else's property line. And Esther thought, I'm going to jail. And then she thought, how could they have misunderstood me? How could my gardeners misunderstood me? And then she remembered them saying, we'll get your view back. And she said, so now that wasn't what Esther intended at all. And so she thought, well, that house is being renovated and maybe it has new owners too, and maybe the new owners don't know about those trees. And then she got distracted thinking about other things, and a day or two passed, and she just happened to look up, and there was a man in a suit standing out on the patio over there looking at the stumps. And then he took his phone out and took pictures. And Esther thought, oh, I have to go confess. So she didn't know how to get into the house because it's across the ravine. She didn't know if she would drive down and then up to it, or up and then down to it. So it took her a little while to get there. And all the way she practiced her speech. I did that, and I am so sorry. And I'll do whatever you want. I'll plant new trees. I'll plant your whole yard. Whatever you want, I'll make it up to you. I am so sorry. And so she got to the property, made her way in. The house was full of men who were plastering and doing all kinds of things. And she said to them, there was a man in a suit out on the patio a few minutes ago. Is he still here? And they said, no, he left. And Esther thought, oh, all right. No one knew. No one had his number. So Esther went home and just practiced her speech more. And then the next day, her friend picked her up for lunch, and they went off again. And when they came back, Esther said, come with me. And she took him from the lower house this time out to look. And she said, look what I did, pointing over at the stumps. And he said, what? And Esther said, my gardeners cut those trees down accidentally. And he said, what? She said, yeah, I asked them to clean up the view, and they did. And he said, Esther, those trees were not just cut down. Where's the debris? Why isn't the hillside all torn up? They couldn't have done that while we were at lunch. And so they walked out to the edge of the canyon and looked down, and up closer to Esther's upper house, there was a little tree that had been all cut down. All the pieces were just laying all down around it. And all that had happened is that they had cut down the tree, and then Esther saw something she hadn't seen before. Isn't that interesting? And Esther said, oh man, that rocks my world. There must be all kinds of other stupid things I believe. Circumstantial evidence. In other words, the way it unfolded caused Esther to believe something that was completely irrational. When she thought about it, when her friend used his rational, non-guilty mind, it was completely not rational. And there are so many things that as humans you come to believe about yourself and others that are not rational. It's circumstantial evidence, something that somebody else said, and then you kept repeating it until it got all stuck in your vibrational craw and now stands in resistance to you getting what you want, but it is not valid. Everything is about perspective. Everything is about perception. There is no reality that is affecting you. It's your perception of the reality. It's what you think about, and you have more control over that than you are exercising. You have the ability to find more satisfaction in more things, but sometimes you get oriented toward making trouble, or oriented toward looking for problems, or oriented toward things that don't feel good. Step one is a natural thing. We're not asking you to have an experience that is not what you want. When you really, really want something and you're living the opposite of it, that feels really, really bad. We're not saying to you you're making this stuff up, but what we are saying to you is you have more control of your vibrational frequency than you have been giving yourself credit. And we're also saying to you, you believe things that are in your way of what you now want, and that's why money doesn't flow to you in the abundance that you deserve it often. Or that's why things that you really, really want don't come. Is because you're looking at what is and blocking what you've asked for. It really is that simple.
Very good.
Enough? Good conversation. Yeah. So how about that? Yeah. Kind of makes you wonder what you believe that's in your way, doesn't it? And you know how you're going to know? It feels unsatisfying when you think it. It feels unsatisfying all the way to frustration, all the way to anger, all the way to depression. In other words, the negative emotion that you feel is your indication that you have active right now a thought that does not serve you and that does not have to be active except for your attention to it.